Good morning, everyone. My name is Alberto Alemanno, and I'm an academic. I'm a professor. So what I do is to teach, spend a lot of time in the classroom with students. But the second task I'm supposed to do is to possibly do research. So I write papers, papers that are published in international journals and circulate, and it's pretty good to do many papers, to write and publish. We say to publish or to perish in our profession. And overall, I've been ticking the boxes. I'm a pretty good teacher and a pretty good researcher, publish papers, so I should be quite satisfied. But a few years ago, I started wondering whether this tick box exercise was enough. And I started wondering whether the impact I was having on students and on the world was enough to be happy with my own life. And I realized at the time that education, and in particular teaching, is not very effective. If you look at the so-called pyramid of learning, the kind of teaching I do, which basically consists in lecturing, what I'm doing right now, right, speaking to people, will lead only 5 people out of 100 to remember what I'm saying. And this is the state of education today. We keep teaching exactly in the same way as we used to do 100 years ago. But let's have a look at my papers, my research, the other half of my professional life. The situation there is also very gloomy. In average, an article written by me is read by 10 people. And the people who cite that article, probably they haven't read it. So I don't feel very comfortable with my professional life because I know I'm pretty good. I have talent to do things, but I cannot really channel that particular talent in life, in real life. I call it system failure. And the very provocative question I have for you is whether I'm the only one here to feel this disconnect between the talent I have and the need of society out there. And the big question is, how can we feel it? Of course, how can we feel it? So regardless of whether you work for corporations, as a professional in marketing, finance, management, or you work for a public administration in a government, in an international organizations, you're pretty likely to feel like me, to feel this gap, to feel that we keep accumulating knowledge and expertise and we're very good in our professional life, but we struggle in transferring this talent into the real world. How can we do that? Well, some of you might say, Alberto, you are very pessimistic. It is true. Sometimes we show up. Sometimes we engage in society. We try to go to demonstrations. We try to do things. But we're busy. Let's face it. We're just too busy. And our bandwidth, our capacity to process information, to make sense of this information during our daily life is limited. That's what I call the bandwidth. And our bandwidth really reflects the choices we make in our life, which are so much sensitive to context, to framing, to what many other people have decided for us. In my case, academia. In your case, it might be your corporation, it might be your community, your city, your village. We are kind of sensitive to that context. Yet, and this is the source of frustration, we have never been better placed to transfer our talent to society. We have never been safer, we have never lived longer in terms of life expectancy, we have never been wealthier in terms of money and resources, and we have never been healthier. We are doing pretty well. Certainly better than our ancestors who have preceded us. So we should be able to make this possible jump between our expertise and the need of our society. And this is all the more true in a society which is pretty much digitally enabled. We have the ICT revolution in our hands. We have the possibility to be creating contents and reaching out people with the content we create. We all know this. Yet, we live our life as we swipe our cell phones every day. We are spectators, we are not actors. We are consumers, not citizens. This is problematic, this is troubling for me. We increasingly feel powerless. Powerless because our choices are made by the state, by the market, but not necessarily by us. And this problem, it is possibly the very root cause of many of the problems we face as individuals, but also as societies, what we call collective inaction. This incapability of solving, of doing problem solving in the right way. Once in a while, we show up. Once in a while, we engage. We even sign up some petitions in order to feel good and to feel engaged on certain single policy issues. It might be the environmental protection, climate change, many issues we feel strongly about, but we do a signature, and then we move to something else. How is it possible that our engagement just is exhausted by this pretty unsatisfactory and cheap way of engaging with society? We still fail to fully exploit our talents. You don't really have to be very talented to make a signature on a petition, right? You can do more. How can we make a difference? Well, everybody will tell you, if you are insatisfied with your situation, if you want to change things with your talents, with your expertise, with your individual experience of life, you can vote. You can entrust your vision of life to those representatives who are going to channel your desire for change into the policy process. Are you more ambitious? You can run for office. You can become a politician. This is pretty much the dichotomy we all face. Either you vote or you run for office. But we all know that in reality, if you look at voting, this is possibly too little. It's something you do every few years. It is not really a great experience, not very engaging. You're not really being part of the process. And running for office is too much. It's a full-time job. So how can we possibly find something else? Isn't there another way to make a difference in life, which is different than engaging as a voter or becoming a politician? And that's exactly where we come in with our ideas. An idea which presupposes a lot of understanding on what a lobbying is, or it should be, and we call it the good lobby. It's an oxymoron. Two terms that usually do not get along very well. How can you lobby and be good at the very same time? So let me give you an example. Right now we are facing a huge crisis in Europe. We all know about it. And this issue is migration. We are not capable of deciding at the collective level how to possibly tackle these migration flows coming from different countries in the south of the Mediterranean. This is a problem where we have a lot of expertise, we have a lot of people who could make a difference, yet we don't make such a difference. So let me give you a story on the migration situation, which can be extended to any possible policy area. I could be talking about fracking, I could be talking about energy resources, I could be talking about social policies or climate change. Let's stick to my migration example. I'm going to introduce you to Professor John. He's the expert in the area of how to possibly regulate migration flows in the world. He's a pretty well-known professor. Then we have an activist Jane. She's also very good, and she's also working on migration flows right now. Professor John wrote the book of the year on the regulation of migration, and he has 450 readers. He's one of the most successful academics in the world. He managed to convince 450 people to read this book. Success story. He could retire. 550 readers is a huge success. Activist Jane is working on the regulation of migration, trying to advocate for a revision of the so-called Dublin regulation in order to find a better way to register migrants who are coming into the EU and then allocating through quotas the way in which these migrants can be possibly accommodated, and she has 1 million followers. She has a huge potential. But of course, she's not as good as Professor John in solving this issue. And this, of course, is a source of frustration, because he has the expertise when it comes to migration. She has the expertise when it comes to advocate and mobilize people around an issue. But the two people, they will never met. Never. They belong to very different communities. And there are no bridges between them. And if we look behind them, there are a lot of interesting people. Professor John has a lot of researchers, has a lot of students who could also help and be part of this process. And then you have professionals, people who could also contribute to the work of Activist Jane and possibly solving this problem. And what we do at The Good Lobby is possibly mobilize all these actors by doing the following: trying to match the supply of expertise by academics or professionals like you who would like to dedicate 2 or 3 hours every week to a good cause, and to channel this expertise to many non-profit organizations which are mainly active here in Brussels, and they try to advocate for change when it comes to very big policy issues. So we make this link possible. But we also try to engage the students, the new generations, in order to sensitize them to the need to develop skills that are going to be useful, that they're going to have an impact on life, on their life, on other people's life. Everybody's going to win. Academics are going to win because they're going to have an impact with their research. They might get a bit of an increase in terms of readers. The professionals, they're going to like it because they will have the chance to do something different, to possibly have a social impact with their own skills that usually are channeled towards big corporations who also contribute to society, but in a different way. And then we have the non-profits who are going to receive pro bono or low bono good services that for the time being are not really there. And students. Students are going to win also because they will have a first-hand exposure to what is like working in a particular setting which is going to be conducive to learning and having an impact while developing a social purpose. That's what I call citizen lobbying. Citizens who start speaking louder than what they used to in order to possibly equalize the current policy debate, where we have the usual suspects, the big corporations, capable of taking advantage of all the possible participatory channel to their own interest, and somehow shaping the policy process as they want. Not all the voices are heard, and that's why non-profit and many advocacy groups today must be helped in order not necessarily to make a difference at the level in which they act, but at the level in which they will speak louder. And here the idea, and the reason why I'm here with you today, is because what we are trying to do is to crowdsource this expertise for the greater good. So the crowdsourcing expertise consists of putting together people who each has a talent, but usually do not necessarily meet. So they do not only channel this expertise to the nonprofit, but they also create an added value by talking one to another and creating bridges that for the time being, they do not exist. Some of you might still be skeptical. Why lobbying? Why should I use this term? Second oldest profession in the world. Very old connotation. Why lobbying? Well, unlike representative democracy, the classic electoral democracy we know, lobbying works. And that's why there are so many interest groups in this city, in Brussels, also in Washington, D.C., and in other capitals, because lobbying works pretty well. But lobbying is also something that everybody can do, and we often forget this. Each of us is a lobbyist in his personal life, in the relationship you have with your partners, with your family, with your friends. We all try to persuade. Lobbying is about persuasion. It's about putting forward your idea, which is a skill in itself. But being lobbyist means being able to amplify your talent and your expertise to the greater world. Finally, lobbying is good for democracy. Our states at the local, national, European, international level, they need more lobbying, not less lobbying. So we should play the game. Why so? Because lobbying is really about sharing. It's about bringing your ideas and your previous exposure to a particular phenomenon in order to share it with the others. So you create added value, and at the same time, you create accountability mechanism. So you're going to check on your elected, you're going to check on the system whether it performs, whether it delivers. So it creates a very nice tie between you and society. How does it work, the Good Lobby? Well, our entity works in this way. We have a platform on the internet that we still have to improve, and that's why we are here, to sensitize to our needs. We need also your expertise, where anyone, as an NGO, as a non-profit, can register. But also academics, researchers, they can say, I'm here to help. Also professionals working in company or self-employed persons who want to bring in their own expertise, and then students and researchers. So we have these three boxes. And we have developed quite a significant database with a lot of actors who want to work with us. So at the moment, we are working with these organizations, mainly pro bono, in order to help them to have a greater voice in the European policy process. That's basically what we have been doing until now. And the goal, as you can imagine, is to unleash the untapped potential of all these categories of professionals and individuals, and possibly reconnect each of us to civic life. The bottom line is to commodify the civic experience of life, enabling each of us to have a sense of what it's like making a difference by playing an active role in our society. Yes, you got talent, you can do it. Thanks a lot for your attention.